Hello everyone, welcome to this seminar about Hayek and Tao from Zhuangzi Institute. I hope you may enjoy this seminar. The idea of this seminar is to be very short, maybe 20 minutes, and then to have a longer discussion later. Okay. Well, we are going to talk about differences and similarities between the Taoist philosophical thought and the Hayekian thought from Austrian School of Economics. We might cover spontaneous order, freedom, rationalism, language and knowledge, and also government. Okay, Hayek. For those of you that may not know Hayek, but I am sure that most of you already know Hayek quite good. Well, Hayek is an Austrian economist who received the Nobel Prize in Economic Science in the 20th century. And Hayek is popular for four main ideas that I identified. The first one is the concept of fatal conceit. Actually, he has written a book about this concept, fatal conceit. It's the concept that a politician is the misconception of some economists that a politician could manage society in a good way, because this is impossible. This is an utopia, because in fact, rule society is impossible, and to control society will lead to a total failure of society. So this fatal conceit is the fact that the management of society is impossible, and the more you try to control it, the more failure you will get. The second concept is the spontaneous order, which is the opposite concept of fatal conceit, or deal with similarities with fatal conceit. What is a spontaneous order? It's the idea that society can thrive if there are no politicians at all. Society can thrive, can be prosper if individuals are left alone, if individuals controls their life by themselves. Okay, the third one is the idea of business cycles. There is a more economics idea from the economics field that if you have a strong governmental intervention, you in a way or another, you will have business cycles with economic crisis, and also is a very strong advocate of free society. Okay, this is the main ideas of Hayek. It's a short introduction. Well, now we are going to talk about Taoism. First is a short summarize of Taoism. Well, in ancient China, you have three main schools that developed in the 600 before Christ, and these schools are legalism, Taoism, and Confucianism. In fact, Taoism could be considered as the first non-libertarians in human history. And this is very interesting. And if you do a deep research of Taoism, you might well conclude that Taoism is a very strong libertarian ideology. The more conspicuous one and the more famous one is Lao Tzu, who consider individual and happiness, and the happiness of those individuals is the key element for society and for prosperity, and that regulation harm individuals, and government should practice inaction and recognize nature. So instead of changing the way nature is, rulers or politicians should recognize nature as it is. They shouldn't change nature, or they don't need to transform society. Okay, and Lao Tse in the Tao Te Ching book related in a specific section economy and politics. He said, the more artificial restriction, the more poverty you will have. So maybe this will be the first economics idea in history. It might be. It could be the first, one of the first economics ideas, because it's relating poverty and artificial restrictions. Okay, and he considers the worst governmental intervention, the war, and taxes. Well, one important author of Taoism is Zhuangzi. In fact, this is the inspiration of our institute, Zhuangzi Institute. And Zhuangzi further developed the ideas of Lao Tse and developed individualistic anarchism. He is popular for using allegories to illustrate his thought. For example, he uses a lot some birds, some big birds. They are called, like Ta Peng is a very famous one. It's widely known in China. Chongzi also developed the concept of spontaneous order. The same did Hayek in the 20th century. It's really interesting that long time ago, some philosophers developed the same concept as Friedrich von Hayek did in the 20th century. Specifically, Chongzi states this important sentence: the good order is spontaneously achieved when things are left alone. So it's the same concept of fatal conceit, or the same concept of spontaneous order in Hayek. It's the same philosophy behind. Chongzi also considered the state as a great thief. He also said, a small thief go to jail, a great thief become ruler of a state. So essentially, for Chongzi, rulers are thieves. Okay, now we are going to talk about some important concepts in ancient China, in philosophy ancient China. I choose four main concepts. The first one is from Zhuangzi, is Xiao Yao. You don't have this concept in English. This specific concept, you don't have it in English. You might use the word carefree, happy, alone, free, be at ease. It's like a combination of those words, and it's the feeling that you feel when you are alone, when you are happy, when you are enjoying nature by yourself. It's something like this. It's similar to freedom, but it's a very Taoistic freedom. In this picture, you might understand a little bit what this concept means. Okay, the second one is Wu Wei. Wu Wei is represented in some places with a black circle, and it means inaction. It means, well, Wu in Chinese is not Wei, action or act. So Wu Wei, inaction. This concept means that a government should not increase regulation, interventions, should not say people how they have to behave. Also means not to use reason in a very strong way. So Wu Wei also is a critic for rationalism, because if you use reason a lot, you will forget how nature behaves, and you will do it way instead of way. For nature to prosper or to thrive, sorry, you need to practice way. Okay, another concept is Li. Li is a very important concept in Confucius and means tradition, and it's also covered by Friedrich von Hayek. Friedrich von Hayek considered that evolution and moral standards and tradition are important in economics, is important in society. Confucius, with the concept of Li, consider the same idea. And the last one is Tao. In fact, Daoism comes from this Chinese character, is Tao. It's very difficult to define Tao because it's absolutely abstract. In fact, in Tao Te Ching, the definition of Tao is something like the first thing which exists in the universe, and from these things, everything who is what is in the universe comes from Tao. So Tao originates everything that exists in the universe, and it means way. You might define Tao as the law of nature, the way universe behaves, the way things behaves in the universe, and also has a political definition, is the way a government should rule the state to create a good order. But it's related with nature, because Tao comes from the universe, comes from nature. Okay? And you might represent by nature, by a way in these pictures. It's really difficult to define properly. Okay. Now we are in the core of our presentation, is the similarities between Tao, Daoism, and Hayek. I have identified 7, more or less. You might identify more. We are going to discuss later on. Well, the first one, as we already seen, is a spontaneous order. Both Zhuangzi and Hayek identified the fact that if society are left alone, in the meaning that society has no rulers, society can prosper with more intensity. The second idea is rationalism, is the critic of rationalism, because for Hayek, reason, well, for Hayek, economy cannot be fully understand by only a single human being. So it's the world, the economy is so complex that the reason cannot understand how everything works. The same is for Taoism. They consider that a strong use of reason is bad for society, and this will lead to a strong government. So if you relax the reason, you will have less governmental intervention and happier individuals in society. The third one is that both Hayek and Taoism, Tao school, study the concept of the fact that politicians use the manipulation of language to gain power. This has been very clear in Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi considered that politicians first want to control the knowledge through manipulating the language, and then they might become a thief in society by manipulating the language. The same Hayek did in his research. In fact, Hayek quotes several Chinese authors in this specific idea of the manipulation of language. In fact, Hayek has a specific terminology for these words. Is whistle words. Is when you eliminate the meaning of a word and you change this meaning for other meaning, and you might, for example, like social justice. You know, when you put social to justice, you change everything in the definition. By doing this, you can manipulate the language. Okay, the next one is that the fact that evolution is interrupted by government. In the case of Tao, the Tao school, nature is interrupted by government. No, the way the universe behaves is interviewed by reason of rulers. But in the case of Hayek, the evolution of the economy, for example, the evolution of money, the evolution of social standards, the evolution of legislation is interrupted and corrupted by governments. The next one is the concept of Wu-Wei, or not government intervention. Is a conclusion of the previous ideas. The next one is very interesting because Hayek considered that knowledge and spontaneous order are very related, are heavily related between each other. Because for having a spontaneously ordered society, you need to have knowledge spread by the whole society. And individuals, or for example, entrepreneurs, know what customer wants, what society needs, and this is achieved by knowledge and by the price system of the economy. And this is impossible to understand by one single individual, by a ruler, by a politician. It cannot be managed by only one single person. Instead, it's done by infinitude of infinitude large number of people, a great deal of entrepreneurs, and day by day, through the price system. Well, in the case of Tao, it's not an economics idea, but the philosophy is the same. There is a very famous sentence in Tao Te Ching, is Tao ke Tao, Fei Chan Tao, Min ke Min, Fei Chan Min, which means something like that Tao is not describable. You cannot understand what Tao is, you cannot put it in words. So it cannot be understood by people. It's just dispersed, is spontaneous, and it's difficult to understand by individual. So the relation between knowledge and spontaneous order is the same in Hayek and in Daoism. And finally, both philosophies were originated in periods of strong government intervention. In the case of Austrian economics, was developed in Austria in the period of nationalism, strong nationalism in Europe. And in the case of Taoism, it was developed in the warring state periods, and also in the spring and autumn period, which states were increasingly become more strong with stronger governments. Okay, and now some differences between both philosophies. The first one is that for Hayek, moral standards and social standards are a good thing for society. But for Taoism, social standards are not the focus of it's not the focus of their interest, and they defend the nature as itself and not the social standards. In fact, Hayek considered that people at the beginning have instincts, and they need to restrict their instincts and to develop social standards to eliminate these instincts. For example, the first one is the instinct of thief, of the instincts of war, the instincts of aggression to private property. By the evolution of society, these instincts might disappear, and people should restrict their bad instincts. But in the case of Tao, people should behave naturally, and even though they are not holding back their instincts. So it's quite different, this idea. The second one is just a difference between the Europe, the Western world, and the Asian world, is that in Europe you have more contraposition of ideas, but in ancient China you have some eclecticism. You have a mix of ideas and not a contraposition and a clear definition of ideas. In fact, different schools like Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism was recognized by late historians, and at the beginning there were no such distinction between different schools. because they were mixed at the beginning. And in fact, you might find some concept from Tao school in Confucius or even in legalism. Also, another strong difference between Hayek and Tao is the concept of the extensive order. As you might already know, Hayek developed the concept of extensive order. The meaning is that you have a large society, a big society with a large number of people, and it's very difficult to behave in society as you behave in your family. So one thing is microcosm, is the opposite of extensive order. It's a small order. When you is when you are with your friends, with your family. This is the small order. But the extensive order is the society as a whole, and you cannot thrive if you behave the same in the extensive order as you behave in your family. I mean, for example, you need money in the extensive order. You need to create contracts. You need to pay money for getting flats, for getting food, etc. But you don't ask for money when you are with your friends, with your family. So it's a different thing, the extensive order, and you more closer people. So this concept of extensive order is not developed in Taoism. And also, Hayek has a very strong economics focus, while Taoism is not focused in economics. Well, and just the last one before we finish and we start the discussion. I have introduced a difference between the concept of freedom in Kant, who I think represent quite good what Europe or Western world thinks that freedom is, and the concept of freedom in Zhuangzi, which I think is very influential in Asia, especially in ancient China. Well, both Zhuangzi and Kant consider that freedom is the autonomy of the individual. Both, so Western world and Asia consider that freedom is the autonomy of the individual. But what means autonomy of the individual? Well, for Kant, the autonomy comes from the reason. If you use reason and you restrict your instincts and you originate moral standards, you will have more freedom. But by contrast, Zhuangzi thinks that freedom comes from the spontaneity of nature, and it's related with the infinity of the existence, which means Tao, which means cosmos, universe. So freedom is just when a person is left alone without any restriction, without any obstacle from the government, and no matter if this person has money, some choices, it doesn't matter. If you are left alone, you are free for Zhuangzi. So in conclusion, for Zhuangzi, the freedom is defined in a negative way. It's the absence of obstacles for the natural development of an individual. But by contrast, in the case of Kant or in the Western world, is the capability of choice between different course of action. So it's the positive definition of freedom. And finally, some quotes from Hayek on China, who that I find them quite interesting for you. Well, the first one appeared in the Fatal Conceit in page 32. Is Imperial China was great and advanced to civilization during periods of trouble when the government weakened. It's the same that Zhuangzi might have considered if he were alive. And the second one is China was more advanced than Europe, but strong governments reduced innovation and was left behind. So thank you for your time.